But you seem to think that white people
Yeah.
are uniquely evil.
I didn't say that.
The Chinese were massacring Chinese and other races long before they'd ever met a white person. Attila the Hun wasn't white.
In this video, we are going to watch professional model, activist, and victim Monroe Bergdorf, a transgender woman of colour, try and tell Andrew Neil that the UK is irreparably racist and sexist. And holy moly, does she bark up the wrong tree here. Andrew Neil is not the one that you want to be making these claims that you just heard on TikTok to. He cuts through her statements like a warm knife through butter with pure facts, and it is beautiful. Now on to the first clip, and this is real, guys. This is something that she actually released. This is not a parody.
What kind of country is modern Britain? No doubt it's a country that likes to think of itself as inclusive, but that depends where you're standing. To me, as a transgender mixed-race person, we live in a deeply racist society. Why should we expect anything else from a country that's built its success on the enslavement of non-white people? It's that continuous cycle of racism that explains where we are now. Why does the UK acknowledge the sacrifice of people killed in wars, but not the spilled blood of black people? If the UK took our oppression seriously, then people like me who call out racism would be listened to, rather than ridiculed or threatened with death. If white people want to see an improvement for people of colour, they need to understand that racism is not learned, it's inherited, and either consciously or unconsciously passed down through privilege. The uncomfortable truth is that the white race is the most violent and oppressive force of nature on Earth. My worry is that whatever governments do to tinker with institutional racism, it is so ingrained in the fabric of British society that it is too late to do anything about it.
So let's take a closer look at our victim friend Monroe here. She's up here on national TV projecting her story of heart-wrenching victimhood to the world. So let's see what it's all about. So Monroe was a model for L'Oreal, but she was dropped within a few weeks because of a racial row, because of the despicable things that she said about white people, which is actually a first, somebody getting cancelled for talking badly about white people. And then she was appointed as the LGBT advisor for the Labour Party in the UK, a role that is about as useful as a lifeguard at an Olympic swimming event. But she was kicked out of there after a month because old Twitter posts were dug up where she called somebody a hairy barren lesbian and said that gay Tory men are a special kind of dickhead. Essentially, she was eaten not once, but twice by the beast of cancel culture that she actually helped to create. Guys, amongst all the clown world chaos that we see, sometimes things just work out so perfectly in a way that you couldn't even write. She's a champion of the woke causes and the cancel culture for people she disagrees with, whilst at the very same time being guilty of blatant and gratuitous racism herself. And then somebody digs up tweets that, according to her worldview, now make her a bigot. But obviously, it doesn't just stop there, guys. The irony continues. Her whole shtick is that she's a victim of the system because she is a trans woman of colour. So she was a L'Oreal model, and she was hailed because she was the first trans woman of colour that got that role. Which obviously it goes without saying that this is the breakthrough that humanity has been waiting for since the abolition of slavery. And furthermore, she got the job with the Labour Party, which only lasted a few weeks as well, because she's trans. And now she's on Andrew Neil, spouting off at white people on national television to a majority white country. And why is she allowed to do that? Because she is black, talking about white people. And jokes aside, there is no excuse for this. This is a disgusting double standard that is beneath human dignity. And if it were the other way around, with the way that the hate speech laws are going in the UK at the moment, that person would probably be going to court for that. But all this to say, her track record clearly shows that she is an incompetent human being with a room temperature IQ that has garnered status and wealth by being a trans black woman, all whilst building that wealth and status by claiming to be a victim because she's black and trans. And all of this success has happened in the UK, the very country she seeks to demonize. It blows the mind. Now, let's watch Andrew Neil irreparably dismantle her arguments with the art of facts and logic.
We live in a society where we won't even talk about it. So until we actually we've only just really started talking about modern day racism. When we talk about racism, we're always, either talking, sorry to bring up what you talked about, but we're either comparing to America, which is wholly different. The history is very, very different. We celebrate the empire here, but the empire has a horrible history for people of color, but we have a multicultural society. So there's this imbalance, and especially when it comes to education, the whole system needs to change.
But let me look at education. Let's look at the figures on education. 33% of white kids go to university or further education. 37% of black kids go to university or further education. 67% of Indian kids go to university or further education. 76% of Chinese kids go to university or further education. Where's the racism in that?
I'm talking about how people's history and how people's
But I'm talking about now and the chances of young
but
children.
I'm not talking about their...
But what's wrong with these figures?
I'm about to tell you. I'm not talking about their academic performance. I'm talking about how we are taught about each other. If black kids aren't being taught about their histories, if we're being taught, that white history is paramount, that's essentially feeding into a white supremacist narrative. We can't be teaching kids that white is the default, that white people's history is the sole history of this country. We need to be taught about black contributions and other contributions of other cultures within society.
But for most people, what racism is and what they'd like to improve is the chances of people getting on regardless of the colour of your skin.
That's not just racism, though. I'm talking about the mental health.
But it's still quite an important thing. And these figures would suggest that as a country, we're doing reasonably well.
No, that's facts and figures.
But you think, facts and figures are important. But you think
I think it goes deeper
that we are irredeemably racist, don't you?
You may not know this, but less than 10% of the people who watch my videos like the video, and more than 70% of you are not subscribed. This is a phenomenon known as viewer privilege, and it's just another way that I am a victim. The uncomfortable truth is that viewer privilege is one of the most violent and oppressive forces of nature on Earth.
What, this society?
Quite
I do. Unfortunately, I do. I think that Britain, the success of Britain is literally based on racism.
And do you think we're irredeemably sexist as well?
100%.
But if you take something like gender,
I think
we are making advances in terms of gender pay.
All men smashing down the patriarchy, we are going to be on that page. So I think, yes,
but we can make progress.
I think we can make progress and we can combat it.
But if it's irredeemable, you can't make progress.
I mean, it's fighting human nature, and humans are flawed.
Humans are flawed, but you seem to think that white people are uniquely evil.
I didn't say that. The white race is the most violent and oppressive force of nature on Earth. I didn't say that individual people are unique.
Well,
I'm talking about society.
No. You said whites are the most violent and oppressive people.
Well, yeah.
That's what you said in your film.
And if you're going to go back
so that would seem to me that
statistics point that out too.
Really? Well,
yes.
The Chinese were massacring Chinese and other races long before they'd ever met a white person. Attila the Hun wasn't white. It's the same in the subcontinent if you go back hundreds of years as well. The genocide in Rwanda was black on black. So is the Congo, which is the rape capital of the world. These things have got nothing to do with white people.
Okay, and I feel like this situation where I'm sat on a couch trying to justify my feelings towards racism and trying to justify why we're in this situation with the findings of the government. Facts and figures of people going to university is not reflective of the mental health of people of colour. It's not reflective of how people of colour are taught about their own histories, taught about the progress and where we come from. That is not reflective, and that is not indicative that what you've got in front of you, that's not indicative of a fair state of affairs within this society.
What a perfect example of facts versus feelings. He brings up perfectly good statistics that really prove his point and totally and devastatingly disprove her point, and her response is no, those are mere squalid facts and figures. What I'm talking about is mental health, as if she is some sort of omnipotent knower of all mental health, a term that is vague, immeasurable, and relative at the best of times. But this is what she's talking about, and she seems to know that the mental health of people of colour is a lot worse than other people. And I've always found that taking responsibility for my own situation and not playing the victim is the perfect antidote to supposed mental health problems, but that's just me. But also, a very clear example here of critical race theory being espoused by an individual who wouldn't know the first thing about the actual intellectual roots of the ideology, but is just mindlessly blabbering what she's been conditioned to say. The idea behind critical race theory is that white people are irredeemably racist, and that the best thing we can do is spend our entire lives taking a cat of nine tails to our back and reciting the lines, "White silence is violence," all the while giving away all of our worldly possessions to people of colour in order to atone for our whiteness. See the language? White people are the most destructive force on earth. You are irredeemably racist, but you can make progress. Now here is a hamster wheel of eternal self-flagellation for you to run on. This is CRT brainwashing at play with actual NPCs just repeating the programming.
But I do feel like we all need to be on the same page in how we combat this. And I don't feel like white people should be so defensive when it comes to talking about racism. It is a very tough situation and tough subject for everybody to talk about. But really, we need to just bear in mind that it doesn't affect white people.
There were the figures you quoted there, but if you look at the senior echelons of business or the civil service, there's gross underrepresentation of black people. The question is, are white people at the top of those organisations every day saying, what are we doing about it? But unless they are, you won't combat it.
We're going to have to. But they're not so violent. Futile about it. And I think that's why so many black people feel so futile about it. And I don't think that we could, but it's a very big could.
Yep. Except 85% of whites in this country feel they belong to Britain. 84% of Asians. 81% of black people. It's not clear that non-white people in this country feel the way you do.
I do feel like I'm part of Britain, I do.
You do?
Yeah, of course I do.
Despite it being irredeemably racist?
Of course. I mean, there's Black Britain, and, you know, there's black culture within cultures. My Britain is very different to what a white person would have experienced. It doesn't mean that I don't love this country for the opportunities that it's given me. I feel very fortunate in some ways to live in Britain. But I'm also not a fan of the insidious culture that we have here, that we can't talk about racism and that we don't understand what racism is.
We've talked about tonight.
So now you're really grateful for the opportunities that this irredeemably racist, sexist country with the terrible history has given to you. The trans woman of colour. Jeez, you really found a loophole there. Fair play to you. But what do you think about this, guys? I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. Should these people be given airtime? Should they bring them on these shows to own them in front of millions of people and just cut through their worldviews? Or should they just be left in the obscurity that they came from and try and start their own channels and definitely fail? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And as usual, guys, links are all in the bio. If you guys want to watch another video, click right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.